There's a ton of noise out there. So how do you get decision makers to pay attention to your brand? Start a podcast and invite your ideal clients to be guests on your show. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to B2B Growth. I am your host for today's episode, Nikki Ivy with Sweetfish Media. I've got with me today Wart Fransen, who is CEO and co-founder of Leadboxer. Wart, how you doing today? I'm
good, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's a little gray here in Austin, but I'm pushing through. There will be sunshine. I have faith. But I'm excited to talk to you today. We're going to be discussing customer data platforms. Have you dig into that for us here in a bit. But first, I'd love it if you would just give us a little bit of background on yourself and what you and the folks at Leadboxer have been up to these days.
Right. So, as you mentioned, I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders of Leadboxer. And just to give you my quick pitch, as you may know, at any given time, only about 3% of your target market is ready to buy. So introducing Leadboxer, our lead and customer data platform. And we basically help businesses to collect, enrich, and analyze and score a wide range of online lead and customer information to determine buyer intent and transform this into insightful and actionable notifications. So, what we say usually is like, don't waste time talking to the wrong people. We can tell you who you should be talking to.
Nice. This sounds like the answer to a lot of my prayers when I was on the sales floor. So let's get into it. First, if you could just give a tiny bit more background on customer data platforms, and then get into the first of the benefits and why people should be looking into this. It's like you and I discussed, it's email lead generation and how to get ROI out of your database. Get into that for us a little bit.
Yeah, so the category customer data platform, it's a bit of a new category, and it's also very broad. There's many different tools that say that they are a CDP, a customer data platform. There is not an official description yet, but in theory, it boils down to a platform that can connect to many different sources of marketing information or sales-related information, bring all that information into one place, and then basically process and analyze it so that you have a unique view of your customer, all the behavior. Basically bring all that data together so that you can get like a single source of truth about all your marketing and sales data. So that's in a nutshell what a customer data platform should do. We emphasize, or we also added the word lead and customer data platform because that's what we are focusing on. So it's not just marketing information for us, but it's also very targeted towards sales and figuring out your sales opportunities. So leads.
Yeah, that's one of the things I keyed in on. One of the questions I always think about when we're talking about either a new category or a type of platform is who in an organization is going to use this tool. And obviously, it sounds like that first layer would be marketers. But since we're talking about this in terms of leads and in terms of ROI, how often do the sales teams engage with the platform, or walk me through what that looks like? Who on the team is using it and how?
Yeah, it's usually implemented and maintained by a marketing team. But the outcome, the results of a customer data platform are useful for various teams basically within an organization, right? You have the marketing team itself, of course, but then sales also, customer success, or maybe even management. in terms of reporting, that kind of stuff. It basically ties a lot of this information together.
Which is huge because that's what every organization is trying to do right now, right? They're trying
Correct.
to
Yeah.
find ways to, to get their sales and marketing teams aligned, to have that harmony, that synergy between these two things. And when you have a platform that sort of makes that easier or facilitates and even encourages that relationship, that's a good thing. So one of the other things that these types of platforms can do is look at website visitor identification. Talk a little bit about an example of how that works, so we can get a better idea of the application of that.
Right. So we focus primarily on the B2B side of the industry. So if you have an average website with a lot of B2B traffic, there is such a thing that's called IP identification, right? So IP addresses you can look them up and trace them back to a company. So sometimes you can figure out which company was actually visiting your site. That's been around for some time, and it's becoming more and more commodity. So what we've been doing is adding a lot of different touch points so that you can increase the identification on your website. So not just figuring out the company, but actually the real person who is visiting your site. And we do this primarily by connecting it with your email. So, for example, if you have a good email database and you're sending out newsletters every month or every week, that audience and the behavior of the audience, if you connect that to the website, you can actually identify the people visiting your site. So that leads basically to measuring their behavior. So you can figure out basically what they are doing at this moment. And if you put like an algorithm, like a scoring algorithm on top of that, you can also predict who is ready to buy or who has the intention to buy. And that's basically what we're trying to figure out. So we connect all this data together so that we create a unique profile with a complete behavioral stream or a customer journey. And from all that information, we can filter and we can score so that we find the actual the needle in the haystack, basically.
Right. And so that's the way that you identify the who, right? Who is engaging. And then another dimension of it you and I talked about offline was, I guess, sort of the what or the buyer intent. How does Leadboxer look at buyer intent?
Yeah, so there's multiple stages where people do research. It depends, of course, on the product and on the industry. But for example, if you I think there's like 5, I think it's even up to 8 different touch points before somebody's actually ready to contact the sales organization. So what we try to do is to figure out who's already doing all these touch points so that sales can proactively contact these people. And we do that by looking at behavior. And behavior is basically looking at the different pages, downloading white paper. So you don't want to spend your sales time on contacting leads that are not in the right phase, right? If they're just researching, usually that's not a good time to contact them. You want to contact them when they're actually open for the conversation. So that's something it's pretty hard to figure out, and that's something that we can actually help you with.
Yeah, one of the other questions that's kind of coming to my head is, when you think about a lot of the other platforms in this space or that are sort of adjacent to this category, help me sort of figure out where Leadboxer begins and those other platforms end. So I'm thinking of other platforms that can measure some of these same sorts of things. How is Leadboxer different? What's the other dimension that the other platforms are missing?
So when we look at our competitors, we see 2 different kinds of categories, basically. So you have the all-in-one packages, basically like HubSpot, right? They offer all these different tools and all these different services and features, and that gives them the benefits that they have all this information already in their database, right? So that's the good side. The downside is that you have, of course, solution that's not the best one, and usually you already have a lot of tools and assets in place. And that's basically where we are more useful. So we can work with your existing marketing or sales stack instead of replacing it with like a full platform like HubSpot. That's one side. The other side is usually companies work with a lot of, if you look at them, we all know that graph with all the marketing logos, all the tools that are out there, the 5,000 marketing tools. So there's a lot of companies using like 20 different tools.
Yeah.
And we basically try to, get all that information together.
This is an interesting point you make. So with a larger or more broad offering, like with the example you use with HubSpot, if you are already, there's overlap, there's bound to be overlap between this element, what Leadboxer does that HubSpot already does, but there's going to be an overlap between whatever other CRM or outreach tool you're using and HubSpot. So if all you needed from HubSpot was this customer data platform element of it, you're going to end up paying for all the rest of it anyway, because it's such a broad offering platform.
Correct.
So
yes.
Rather where you're saying, Leadboxer recognizes that organizations probably already have this other tech stack in place and just says, okay, where do we need to fill in the gaps? I get that. I love that. Because a lot of folks are going the other way. A lot of folks are like, look, how do we make it so that people never have to leave our platform and only our platform? And you're like, realistically, everybody's using a gajillion pieces of tech tool at the same time. So
and you're switching also, right? I mean, we do too. We switch tools monthly. You try different tools all the time.
And so with something like Leadboxer, there's less of this, anxiety about, okay, I like what Leadboxer's doing. I know that it will work, but I only have these other pieces and it has to work with these other pieces. You're saying you've taught Leadboxer how to integrate well with and speak to those other platforms as well. That's the way to go.
Yeah, correct. If you swap providers or you swap mail platform, doesn't make any difference for us. So we just grab the data there.
Nice. And so this was really good. I really was very curious coming into this conversation on some of those points, and you've illuminated for us all. So now that I have successfully picked your brain and seen what I could get out of it, I'm interested in what you are putting in it. What are you reading? What are you listening to? What learning resource have you been engaging with these days that's informing your approach or got you excited these days?
So, I listen a lot to also podcasts, of course. One of my favorite is the SaaS podcast from Jason Lemkin, and so that's one of my main sources of inspiration, basically in terms of sales. But I also read a lot of blogs. Of course, the default like Neil Patel or any of those other marketing guys. I read them a lot. But I don't really have like one main source. I just pick whatever I get.
No, it's probably better that you don't. It's probably better that you're not like, this book is my Bible.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Well, thanks for
many good sources. Yeah.
For sure. I get to hear them a lot on this show. So for folks who are curious and hearing more about what we've talked about today and keeping up with you, how can people connect with you, Wart?
Yeah, obviously they can go to the site, leadboxer.com. You can also, of course, drop me an email, wart@leadboxer.com, or just find any way to connect to us. We have a chat. We have a mail, a Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. You should be able to find me.
All the things. All right. Well, thanks so much, Wart. This has been really good. I'd love to have you on the show again here in the future and talk about what other stuff you guys have up your sleeve down the road. Thanks so much.
Sure. No problem. Thank you.
We totally get it. We publish a ton of content on this podcast, and it can be a lot to keep up with. That's why we've started the B2B Growth Big Three, a no-fluff email that boils down our 3 biggest takeaways from an entire week of episodes. Sign up today at sweetfishmedia.com/big3. That's sweetfishmedia.com/big3.